Now we get into this stuff. The horizontal and vertical risk explanation is a little bit more complicated. So if it sounds confusing, stop me and let me go over it again. I like to tell people that I have to hear something 3 to 5 times before it begins to sink in. And that's simple stuff. This is pretty complicated, so don't worry about it if it doesn't make sense right at first. Let's compare two populations, acute and long-term care. And by acute, I'm talking about health plans, things like inpatient hospitalization, Blue Cross Blue Shield, those type of folks. The horizontal risk profile for acute care looks something like this. At any given point in time, you could have an enrollee who you never even see. They never come through your door. You may have a third of your population that you never see. But you also might have someone show up that on any given single episode can run up $120,000 in expenditures. A heart transplant, something like that, an acute care event. So what we call this is the range of need. I refer to it as the range of need. In an acute environment, the range of need is huge. It's broad. And I'll point out why that's important in a minute. In long-term care, and I'm going to use the developmental disabilities world. It differs with different disability communities, but with the developmental disability folks, most of y'all are developmental disabilities providers, right? Or related to the developmental disability field? Okay. Let's use residential services, for instance. They probably run between $700 and, let's say, $3,200 residential services, not including ICFs. A group home typically can cost up to $3,200 a month. Compare this range of need to this one. It's minuscule by comparison. Minuscular, wouldn't you say? Capitations work well in this one, and they tend not to work well in this one. And can anyone guess why would it be easier for a capitation to work in this environment when it wouldn't be so easy for it to work here? Well, but what does that mean? Give me something more concrete. It's both of you are right, but I'm looking for something specific. Did you have? Yes. There's no low-end users. The low-end users are too close to the high-end users. There's not enough people to balance the dollars off. So you end up with a situation where you get hit with someone, let's say that you've got someone who decompensates for some reason. They start smashing furniture and breaking windows, ruining equipment. They all of a sudden become very expensive. And it may be episodic. It may only last 3 months or 6 months. But they no longer fit that profile. So in the state of Arizona, we were, this is actually true, I think we were at $2,400 per member month on our long-term care services for people who did not depend on ventilators. People who depended on ventilators, we got $10,800 per member per month. But that was it. If all of a sudden we had a sexually predatory young adult male who required 2-on-1 24/7, we were scrambling to find the money. Now, in a situation like this, you may have 10,000 enrollees. Of those 10,000 enrollees, 3,000 never show up. They've just got the insurance in case something bad's a catastrophic situation. You're still getting paid the capitation for those $3,000 people. So what do? You bank it until that odd person comes along that costs a whole lot of money. But in this situation, there's really nothing to bank. You don't really have any reserves that you can hold. And even if you do, even if you are able to scratch together a little reserve, if you're a government entity, which fortunately in Wisconsin y'all are not set up that way, but we were, if you're a government entity, you have to give it back at the end of the year. General fund reverts by law. So there's all kinds of tricky issues. This is horizontal risk. I'm going to do vertical risk in a minute. Is this clear? Is it pretty intuitive? Okay. Vertical risk is simultaneous. It happens, it parallels this issue of range of need and low-end users being available to help subsidize high-end users, because that's really what's going on in a capitation. Let's say federal government, state government, regional authority, county, and then I'm going to put provider. I'm going to skip municipal, because in Medicaid there is no such thing. In Ryan-White Care Act, there's one between state and regional. There's what's called an eligible metropolitan area. But y'all don't have to worry about that. In vertical risk analysis, what you're really talking about is where do you put the risk? And we tend to call this, let's say provider, and down here is the person. Let's call him John. That's me receiving services. We usually refer to this as going downstream. So one of the issues that you have to consider when you're contemplating putting in a managed care system, a capitation system, is at what point do you put the responsibility of managing the risk? Remembering that the risk is being able to offset the high-end users against the low-end users. What's the risk? What's the risk pool here? This is another candy bar question, but it's a little easier. 1. It's me. I'm it. I'm the enrollee. So like here you'd have a risk pool of 1. You wouldn't have much luck capitating me as the only person of your enrollment. It would be the same thing as a fee schedule. A provider may have 100. A county may have 2,300. A regional authority may have 1,500. A state may have 20,000. You can see that as you go further upstream, your risk pool gets bigger. So your ability to offset high-end users against low-end users gets better. Right? Does that make sense? Is there any question about that? What would that compel you to do if you were trying to make a decision about where to place the risk?
Try to push it down.
Why? Why would you push it down? Push it up.
Well, but aren't you saying, though, that the state of Wisconsin doesn't want to hold all the risk, though?
They don't. But who's best able to do it? Again, I don't want to argue.
Yeah, correct. Ideally.
Well, they can.
That's not necessarily assumed.
Right, and there's other ways to do it. There's ways to do it where you can set the risk, you can set the point of risk bearing downstream and put things in place that make it safe in a smaller risk pool. The point is that whenever you're looking at capitations as a financial compensation structure, you have to look at these things. You have to look at the horizontal risk. Is the population range of need broad enough to be appropriate for a capitation? Is the risk base big enough? That's the horizontal and vertical risk analysis. Vertical is, are you high enough upstream so that the risk base is big enough? And the horizontal is your population a large enough range of need so that you will have low-end users that can offset the high-end users, or is your population too homogeneous to be appropriate for capitation? Those are the concepts involved. Now, all of this is against a backdrop of reinsurance.